I can't kick. My kick is not up. It's a 24-second interrupt. I'm not CCing. I'm 20 yards away from those mobs. What's a frontal? You know, all the ranged things. So today we're going to be talking and ranking ranged DPS about ease of play, and I'm joined by Yoda and Onezy. Hello, how are you guys doing?
Yo, doing good. Hello.
What up?
So we kind of talked about ranking specs by difficulty to pick up and play proficiently. Yoda, what exactly parameters did you want to set for what we were going to be doing with these ranged DPS specializations?
I think we were going with easiest to play decently, but we're not going to delve too much into like the mastery part. Like if you don't need to learn, like let's say Venthyr Moonkin is the hardest spec in the game, but normal Moonkin is super easy. We would call it super easy.
Okay, seems pretty reasonable. So like covenants and like super niche optimizations, not exactly the forefront of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just the class itself.
Makes sense. I mean, it's gonna be applicable to like Dragonflight as well, assuming things aren't getting majorly reworked with the classes. Obviously, it's pending reworks and stuff like that. Okie dokie. So I have all of the ranged specializations at the top, and we're gonna start off with the hunters, notably Beast Mastery Hunter, which I think is pretty regarded as the easiest DPS in the game to play. Is that fair?
I think Marks is easier to play decently. I think a lot of BM hunters think, oh, this is easy, and they just spam their buttons and they lose a lot of damage. Like if you just want to like perform okay, it's probably easiest. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are like slight things you need to look out for when you're playing BM.
Yeah.
For example, like your barb shot uptime and
Mhm.
you know your buff uptime in general.
Yeah, like you actually have to pay attention to like how long on your barb shot for BM Hunter, whereas Marksman, you just push your buttons when they come up.
Yeah, I think that is kind of fair. I think they're both relatively pretty easy. But the thing I like about BM is there's really no mechanics that hold it back, right? Like when you're playing MM, like you kind of have to like play around aim shot a little bit in terms of like, you know, making sure you don't have a mechanic just fucking you while you're standing still pressing that thing.
Yeah.
Whereas as BM, you can kind of just like run around willy nilly, you know, disengage, do 360s. Like you can kind of just do whatever you want, and you'll be pretty much doing the same thing.
I feel like BM and Raid, you also just press your cooldowns whenever they come up, and you have blatant disregard for all of them. Whereas marksmanship, sometimes you're gonna have to hold your CDs for certain things. I mean, it just kind of depends on where your cooldowns are gonna be slotted. I guess Wild Spirits kind of puts a wrench in things, but I feel more like BM, you're just pressing your buttons. Like it's notably, I think, easier in Raid.
Yeah, for sure. Like Bestial Wrath and Aspect of the Wild or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
you pretty much just slam those buttons on cooldown and you don't really like think twice about it. So yeah, I mean, I'd have to say like they're both really, really easy, but yeah, maybe BM is just a little bit better in terms of like being able to not worry about your buttons that much, and you can just kind of move as much as you want whenever you want.
So I think that at least for me, BM is an S. Is MM also an S?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say they're both S tier in terms of difficulty. Just about how easy they are to play. I'm pretty sure they're both just like straightforward. All you need to do, like, you know, keep Beast Cleave up on AoE, keep Trick Shots up on AoE, and then, you know, hit kill command and aim shot, and you're pretty much just doing the Lord's work.
Vibes. All right. Yo, do you want to start us off with Warlocks? We have Destruction first up.
I would say like one tier below BM Hunter, because like on super massive AoE, you just push rate of fire over and over again. But you know, once you get to like 5, 4, 3 targets, it becomes a little bit more complicated, I'd say.
It also again, it also depends what you want to bring out of the class. Like for example, if you want to bring all the utility out of Warlock, like some of its utility is really niche, right? Like for example, if you're placing down a Warlock portal, like you kind of want to think ahead a little bit of like when you're going to use that portal and like when it's going to become like really good for you, or like a Warlock gate, for example. So I think there is like a little bit of thought process into like using their util and just like playing the class in general. I definitely agree with Yoda where like if you're playing more than single target, definitely gets a little bit more complex in terms of min-maxing, but for sure it's still a very easy class, and I would definitely say it's either A or S tier.
Okay, so how do you feel about it like in Raid then? So obviously for Mythic Plus, especially on AoE, one button spec with how it currently operates.
Yeah.
Especially with the tier set too.
Yeah, I mean with Raid, I don't know. I feel like I haven't really played much of it in Raid to be honest, but from what I see, just like on single target in general, like it seems like pretty basic. Like you really just want to keep like good uptime on your eradication, make sure you're getting your chaos bolts with your backdrafts and your eradication buff uptime. Like
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a generator spender.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's I would say it's still really simple, and it would probably still be A or S tier even on single target in terms of difficulty.
How much does mobility suffer potentially without things like soul shape?
It's pretty bad for sure. It's kind of like Moonkin, where like if you don't have Starfall and you have to move it all, like you're basically just losing all your damage.
Yeah, you're
If you're on AOE, it's a lot different though because of how fast you'll generate shards and how fast you'll be able to spend them.
Yeah.
So on AOE when it comes to movement, it's not really a big deal, but on single target for sure it affects Destro Warlock a lot.
Yeah, biggest thing is your single target spender has a cast time and your AoE spender is instant. So on AoE you
Yeah.
can basically just like it's kind of like BM Hunter, you just jump around and do 360s for fun. But single target, you have to stand still.
I think general builder spenders are normally some of the more easier to understand, at least in theory. Affliction. Yeah. I played it in season 1 after the rework, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think about Affliction in regards to its difficulty with the new Malefic Raptures, like the spender. It's not really like it's kind of a dot spec, but it's not really a dot spec anymore in the same way it has historically been.
I'd put it on the harder end.
Yeah, I'll put it on the harder end, and like it's kind of like a thing where like on AOE it becomes a lot easier, right? Because you're just like spamming seed over and over. But then once you get the single target, there's a lot more intricacies, like your buffs, your dots, your cooldowns. There's definitely a lot more intricacies when it comes to playing Affliction on single target, and I definitely think that makes it a little bit more of a harder spec in terms of everything you have to track on that. But yeah, for AOE, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So I'd probably put it at like a B tier or something.
Yeah.
I think the mobility historically with Affliction has been better than the other Warlock specializations just due to the ability to like have instant cast abilities that you can cast on the move.
Yeah.
But with this
expansion,
expansion,
most of your dots are single target or instant cast rather.
Yeah, this expansion, it feels like you have to spend so much more time like hard casting Malefic Rapture and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I do think its mobility is probably better than Destro Warlock, but yeah, I think I'd put it at B as well. Yeah.
I think in terms of difficulty, I think B is good because like it still brings a lot. Like if you're looking at it in Mythic Plus, it can bring a kick, it can bring a dispel, it can bring Healthstones.
Yeah,
I definitely think it brings a lot, and like being able to min max all that for your team and bring out the most utility for your team. It's definitely not the easiest thing as a Warlock.
It's also, I mean, it seems like it's very complicated to play on a fight like Prototype Pantheon, especially when we're playing like ID and having to maintain a bunch of dots on 4 or 5 targets. It seems like it can get pretty complicated on fights like that as well.
Yeah, I think for the more casual player, I would say Affliction is probably the hardest spec out of all the Warlocks. Simply because, I think Demo and Destro is really easy. I just think with Affliction, like with the thing about like Demo and Destro is like you're not really tracking your dots and like those kind of abilities as much, whereas you're kind of just like hitting your buttons on those 2 specs. Whereas Affliction, like I feel like you're like tracking a lot. Like you're looking for mechanics, you're looking at your dots. I feel like you're just looking at a lot more when you're playing Affliction.
Okay, so I think that's a good segue into demonology. Yoda, you want to lead us off with demo talk?
I'd say in terms of just playing it, to like a normal level, demo's pretty easy. You just push your buttons off cooldown, spend when you have shards, but once you get like one step above that, because eventually you're going to want to start building into burst windows like your Tyrant. And if you mess that up, it becomes very, very punishing.
Yeah, that's really just like the main punishment of Demo is just like having good Tyrant goes. Like if you know how to have good Tyrant goes, like you're probably a good Demonology Warlock. Like it's really the whole thing revolves around like just getting as many pets out before your Tyrant, and really all your damage just comes out right then and there. So in terms of difficulty, I'd probably put it between Destro and Affliction, simply because of the difference of difficulty compared to Affliction and Demo, and then how easy it is to play Destro. So the fact that the only thing you really need to track on Demo is your Tyrant, I really think it makes it a lot more easier compared to Affliction. But the fact that you don't really need to track anything on Destro will make Demo harder than Destro, because Destro you can just do whatever you want.
I mean, notably, the movement on demonology is something that I see Warlocks talking about more often than not, because it is very stationary, and this normally impacts them a little bit more in Raid than Mythic Plus, because like Mythic Plus you just kind of have to bite the bullet on movement.
Yeah, dude, like nothing is more tilting than when you're playing Warlock on Jailer and Demon Warlock on Jailer and you just get any mechanic and you just lose 6 of your imps. Like you just have to tell all your imps to fuck off because you got one mechanic. Like it is just so annoying, man. Like that it definitely, like, movement out of all the specs, it probably hurts Demo the most if you're about to go into a Tyrant Go. Like if you're not in a Tyrant Go and like you need to do mechanics, like it's kind of whatever for your DPS and like, you don't really lose much. But if it lines up with the Tyrant, like, oh, you just want to fight Jesus himself. Like, why did he put this curse on you? Like,
well, because the Tyrant CD is normally like 1.5 minutes, and with Wilfred's is a little bit lower. This expansion.
yeah, and if you have PI, which like 99% of the Demo Warlocks get in raid, so their fucking Tyrants are coming up like in like 50 seconds. Like they're just pumping those things out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that makes sense. Okay, the spec that I actually suck by far the most at, Fire Mage. Onezy, how do you feel about Fire Mage? Because this is by far the spec that I am the worst at, but I don't know if it's because it's hard or if because it's just...
Yeah, I think it's mainly just because people don't know like what buffs they're looking for as Mage. Like they're like when they hit Pyroblast and Phoenix Flames, like who knows if like the casual player like knows what to do when those things like set up a proc for you.
Yeah.
And when you go into like a pyro combust rotation or whatever. So I think in terms of like how you actually build up your damage with that spec and like the intricacies that go into it, it's definitely harder than any of the classes we've talked about so far. And I would definitely put it in probably like a C or maybe even D.
It's just so jank with like combustion.
I'd go C, I think.
I don't know. I would put it in C. It's like Fire Blast and Combustion both being off GCD and having to make sure that you're so diligent with your like combustion windows. It's kind of similar in Demonology in that regard. But like if you mess up your combustion window, you are losing all of your damage because of how Fire Mage is set up.
Yeah, like if you fuck up your Pyroblast and your Phoenix Flames and you're not getting like enough charges in your combust and like you're just like sitting there with your tail between your legs, like it is just gonna cost you so much damage.
At the same time though, like just a little bit of time in front of the dummy will teach you, and you should be able to do the same combust every time.
Like the thing is, I think people just need to hit all the buttons on Mage and just see like what is giving them the procs. What is reducing the CDR. Like they just need to see like what the buttons actually do. Like I think if you're just looking at it on paper, like compared to the other classes and like how you do damage on it, it's definitely a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you like hit it on a dummy for 10 minutes and you just like take your time to figure out what the abilities actually do, I think people can pick it up pretty quick. But then once it comes to min-max and Mage, like getting good shimmers in, make sure your mirror images, get up time on barrier, all that stuff.
That's really hard.
Yeah, that's where it becomes really hard because you're trying to do as much damage with all these buttons that are off GCD, and like you're just trying to press so many things at the same time, like it's ridiculous. So there's just definitely a lot going on for Mage for sure.
I have a question as well. So like, isn't there also a macro that was floating around at like the beginning of expansions, like a 1-button macro for Mage combustions? Is that like applicable, or do you think that's like a hard avoid? Or
yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't think I really have a good answer for it, but I don't know. I mean, we've seen a lot of things like that this expansion where it's just like 1-button macros on classes like Warrior, Venthyr Boomkin, Fire Mage. There's a lot of things where you can just press one button and you're just gonna pop like 4 abilities at the same time and just start pumping out. Like there's definitely a lot to look for on a Fire Mage for sure.
Generally the consensus is kind of avoid those things, but if you're like really, really struggling, I guess you could use it, but you're gonna probably need to learn how to do serious combustion goes.
Yeah, I definitely suggest like just learning the abilities first before you make the macro, and just so like like I don't know. I feel like it.
I wouldn't use something like that.
I wouldn't use something like that either. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. I just feel like it'll make it harder to learn the class.
I don't know how it interacts with their tier set either. I just remember it floating around in 9.0 that it was like a thing that was, even then it was still like a 10% damage loss, which like at that point that is like a significant amount of damage.
Oh, it's already damage. Yeah, no.
No. It was a big damage loss. It was like a damage loss. Okay, Frost Mage. People kind of clown Frost Mage. It's a lot of movement, a lot of mobility. It's a mage, so it has like shimmer, free procs from Lance. Frozen Orb also insta cast ability.
Yeah, Fire Mages and Arcane Mages hate Frost Mages because of how easy they get to live their lives. Like they're just like on AoE, they're just hitting Orb and Blizzard. They're just hanging out. On single target, they're hitting Frostbolt and Glacier or whatever it's called. Was this like Flurry? Is that what it's procs?
Yeah, Flurry. They're not. I don't think they're GS.
Yeah. So yeah, you get your Flurry procs after a Frostbolt. You send another Frostbolt, send the Flurry. Like you're just having a good time on Mage, on Frost Mage. And like I don't know, it's definitely a lot easier compared to Fire and Arcane, and it would definitely probably be in like the A or maybe even S tier for sure.
Yoda, any disagreement here? I feel like this is
only reason why I would say it might be A tier is simply because of what it brings outside of damage. Like I feel like a lot of mages aren't good at using like alter time and min-max and barrier or even mirror images sometimes. I think that definitely will speak volume to how good the mage is if they know how to use those abilities good compared to their damaging abilities. But yeah, I would say in terms of just damage straight up, I would put Frost Mage as an S tier. Like, it is pretty straightforward, and you're just hitting the same buttons over and over.
I mean, if we're factoring that kind of stuff, and then I think Fire should be a little bit higher because of Cauterize, and like Warlock's obviously stupid
That's
because
true.
of like self survivability. I think it's like
Yeah,
difficult
yeah.
to factor that kind of stuff in though.
Yeah, I think Cauterize is definitely one of the strongest abilities in the game. Like, that is a ridiculous button. Or,
Unbelievable.
it's not even a button; it's just a talent or whatever. But yeah, that thing is crazy. But yeah, I would say in terms of damage, I think you're right. I think Frost Mage is like an S tier.
They just don't get punished.
Yeah, like I think Frost Mage is like sometimes they're Venthyr, but I think they're always Knife A. I'm not too sure now, actually. I remember back when I was playing it during MDI.
It's Venthyr single target.
Okay. Yeah, when I was playing in MDI, it was basically just Knife A for everything. So you have 2 shimmers, you have a blink, you have alter. Like, you're just, if you need to be somewhere, you're there. Like, you're just, it's so easy.
Yeah, Frost Mage was definitely a spec. Like, if you died, it was your fault. Period.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Arcane. I think it's pretty highly regarded as one of the harder, I guess, range specs to play. Most tiers, they are fairly limited in regards to like their cooldown management with things like Arcane Power. They're also limited like mobility wise. Like if they don't have Shimmer, or if they don't have charges.
Actually, they don't spec Shimmer, right? They spec the movement on Arcane Missiles usually.
Oh, okay. So even that, it's like if they don't have Blink available to them, they can end up running into some issues. I know that they have their movement a lot easier this patch over other patches just due to their additional legendary and stuff like that with like Unity. Overall, where are you guys feeling like Arcane is, Yoda? I guess you can start here.
I'd say it's definitely the hardest one. Probably D.
The hardest.
I mean, the only really Arcane Mage like I've witnessed is Mitch Jones. Like, he's basically the only Arcane Mage I've ever watched. Yeah, I've watched a lot of his stream playing Kyrian Arcane Mage, and it looked really fun. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot going on with that spec, especially when you compare it to everything else on the board. So yeah, probably a D or C tier.
I mean, gosh, did you guys play with an Arcane Mage on Anduin at all? And they had to properly time their...
Oh, yeah, for the down phase?
Yeah, no. They had to properly time their... oh, gosh, what's the name of that ability? It's like the rune that slams onto the target.
Magi?
Yeah. They have to properly time their Touch of the Magi on the Kingsmore... in the intermission phase with the Lich King, and like if they messed up, then they wouldn't kill the ad, or like if it was too far away, their Touch of the Magi wouldn't hit the ad.
Oh,
and I feel like
yeah.
Arcane is so unbelievably cringe.
Yeah, that is definitely very cringe.
I've done a lot
That is
of
very
Plague Fall with like mage experts, and I've seen like the massive difference between like the mages who actually play Arcane versus the ones that are trying to pick it up, and it is night and day. Like, Arcane Mages is definitely the hardest spec in the game. Like, one of the hardest specs in the game, if not the hardest.
Yeah, from looking at everything on the board right now, I'd probably put Arcane at D. I think that's good.
Okay. Shadow Priest. Not actually a spec that I'm super familiar with. I don't normally dabble in Shadow. I know that both of you guys played it during MDIs at various points due to how good it was in Necrotic Wake and just, I mean, generally how strong it was. How do you guys feel about how Shadow Priest performs and how difficult is it to play?
I think outside of its movement, I think it's like one of the most fun range specs to play. I think it's really fun, and when you get off a really good Void form and you get the most Mind Blast or Void Bolts out of it, it's a really, really good feeling. It's definitely not the easiest one. I'd probably have to put it at like a B or something, considering just how different it is compared to the ones up top. I think there's a lot going into how you use your Void form and how you get the most out of your Void Bolts, and just overall how the rotation works in general. Maybe Yoda has something different.
I think B's about right. It seems like I think it'll be reworked in Dragonflight, but it just feels like there's so much random stuff that is not related to each other that you have to do on Shadow Priest. Feels like it just has a bunch of cooldowns that you just push and they're not related, and then now you're in Void form too. So like there's a lot going on, but it's not all cohesive, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, the buttons like give each other like synergy. Like, for example, like you can like proc a DP off like a Void Bolt or whatever.
Yeah.
I forget how it works. But like obviously, like what you're saying, there's not really many coherencies where if you line them up together, you're gonna get something else out of it. But I think that makes it better for like a more casual player, because like it's more like upfront, like like if something procs, like you pretty much just send it on the Shadow Priest. It's pretty straightforward. But yeah, in terms of min max, I think it's definitely a very fun class to play, and yeah, probably B tier for me.
B tier. But right now, like, there's no optimization of void form windows because for a long time there was either in Legion you had to optimize it just due to like either surrender to madness stacks or just kind of depends on like what the patch was. And then in BFA they had chorus where like you had to optimize like your duration in your void form because you were getting crit. Is there nothing like that with current Shadow?
Nah, I mean, I can't think of anything like that when we were playing in MDI. It was pretty much just, just hit void form and, send the bolts. It was pretty straightforward. I can't really think of anything.
Okay. Moonkin. I think suspect that we've all played a pretty considerable amount.
Yeah, this is actually the Moonkin Council.
Yeah, the Moonkins are rated every range spec right now. This is actually what's happening.
The Balistries are rating all the range specs. I think it's harder than the Hunters and the Frost Mage. But I think it's easier.
I'm putting it at S, if I'm honest.
You're putting it in S?
Base Moonkin, I would put it S. Like, Venthyr Moonkin is probably like C or D, but base Moonkin...
Billy told me Venthyr Moonkin is harder than Fire Mage, but I don't know how true that is.
Well, it's difficult. Okay, I think that you can make a compelling argument to put it... Like, now that I'm really thinking about it, so you always have movement options if you really want to talent Stellar Drift, whether that be in raid or
that's a big one for me. Like if you don't feel like playing around movement, you just push Starfall and you're fine.
Yeah, for me, it's the kind of same thing as when I was talking about Frost Mage, whereas like the damage abilities are super easy, right? Like you're in a Lunar Eclipse, spam Starfire. If you're in a Solar, you spam Wrath, whatever. But when it comes to like Mythic Plus and using their utility, I think that would drop it to an A in terms of difficulty because of like how much they can bring to the table from
that's
Mythic
true.
Plus.
That's true.
Like, like the amount of shit I had to do in season 1, like Ursul's, Typhoon, Heart of the Wild, Trees, Root this, Cyclone that. Like, all right, man, I'll do everything. Like, I don't care, but like,
I'll press all my buttons.
Yeah, like I'll press everything you need me to. But like the thing is, like asking a casual player to do that, I feel like would be kind of overwhelming.
You're also not really able to play Stellar Drift and Mythic Plus anymore. You really need to be playing Twin Moons to be able to get like optimal damage.
I saw that, but I don't really know much about Mythic Plus Boomy. I haven't really looked at it at all in season 4, so you probably have a better weighting than I do.
I think it's pretty reasonable to chop it up as A or S. I think that it's like a general builder spender that makes a lot of sense. If we're not counting in Venthyr, I like the cooldowns on the spec like at a base kind of suck. So like you're not there to really, you don't like have damage windows that you need to optimize super heavily at like a core kit. I think that S, at least in regards to how it does damage, is pretty fair.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Be warned, you're going to be asked to do a lot if you played the spec. Okay, Ellie Shaman. I know that there's actually a decent amount that's changing about Ellie Shaman come Dragonflight, right? There's like it seems like there's a couple of builds that I was reading about.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more like builds that are actually relevant compared to right now. Like right now, it's really only just one build you play. There was 2 at one point, but they ended up nerfing the other one right before the season 3 came out. And it was owned in single target by like a lot. But yeah, I would say it's a really fun spec, and it also can be hard depending on what talents you're running. Like if you're running I think it's called like Elemental Blast and Ice Fury, like a lot more intricacies and buff up times you need to watch out for when you're playing those. But if you're just running like a regular, like no Elemental Blast, no Ice Fury build, just Lava Burst, Earth Shock build, I think it's really easy and like it's really straightforward. But yeah, once you start picking certain talents, I think it can get a lot more difficult, and the min-max of it can be a lot more fun. So I'd probably put it like an A or B tier depending on what talents you pick.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how it is. Like you can go like the just spam lightning bolt build, or alternatively, like you can put a new button on every single talent row. And it becomes way harder. Like you have to keep everything off cooldown, and there's no way you can actually possibly play every talent to the maximum. So you have to decide which talent you want to sacrifice at different parts of your rotation. So I'd say that Ellie Shaman is very difficult to play, but you can also just go like the spam lightning bolt build, and that one's very easy.
I've heard Elemental Shamans also kind of talk about their mobility without things like Gust of Wind, and if they just like don't really have access to mobility options outside of the Soul Shape, it can also become problematic. They do because they don't really have a ton of instant cast like abilities that they can reliably press. Is that an issue that you guys have seen? Is just like how difficult it can be to move at times. Like say how is there damage on the move on say something like Halandris, for example? It's like pretty bad, right?
Oh yeah, on a movement like on a boss like Halandris where there's a lot of movement and you have to run that far, it's definitely really bad. But if it's just like slight movements for mechanics, I think it's really easy because you're dealing with like Lava Burst procs, you're dealing with Earth Shock procs, and if you're also playing on single target, you'll have Ice Fury some of the time. So being able to line up your Ice Fury and being able to Frost Rock through mechanics, like if you line it up correctly, it could also keep your damage uptime really good. I think it depends. If you have to do long strides of movement like Calandris, yeah, Elemental will be really bad. But if it's short bursts of movement for just like slight mechanics, I think Elemental can line up their abilities just fine and just, use procs and shit just to get out of them.
Seems pretty reasonable. It seems like, I mean, stutter stepping for most of the ranged, it always seems like they have a couple of viable options to be able to like stutter step a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Unless you're Arcane, which I mean, they just seem like they're rooted every single time they drop Rune of Power. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's probably the reason why you don't see them anywhere, because people would drop a Rune of Power, then they get a mechanic, they're like, yep, I'm done with this thing. Like, get me off this fucking class. Like, people probably hate that thing.
Okay, so just kind of looking at this, anything that you guys believe needs changing? I guess, are we okay with the Hunters since we ranked them first?
Yeah, I think I would move the Warlocks. I think I would put Demo B, F, C.
Interesting.
But that's from as a non-Warlock main.
Okay. Well, that's the thing. I played a lot of Demo, so I guess I just think it's easy because maybe I've been playing it for a long time. But I honestly, when I first picked up Demo, I thought it was overwhelming just because, like, when you're looking at a Demo player play, like, there's like so many pets and, like, so much going on.
When I was setting up weak orbs, I was like, holy shit, I have to track my pet duration.
Yeah,
but then, I guess you don't actually have to do that. You just, push it when it comes up.
Yeah, it does feel a little overwhelming. So maybe you're right. Maybe we could put Demo at B and Affliction at C.
I think just dealing with a pet in general makes it
Yeah.
I remember in BFA there was a brief period of time where Demonology Warlock was insanely overpowered, and we were considering doing it for MDI, and we were like, oh gosh, we have no one that can play Demo, and this spec is insanely hard. What do we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to put it B.
Okay, so I guess before we go, if you were going to give somebody like one spec to pick up that you think would be easy to play, and you're going to like be able to get pretty good results relatively quickly, what are you kind of recommending to people?
Hunter.
It's kind of
there's a reason it's the most popular spec in the game, and I think it's because it's widely considered to be very easy.
So easy to pick up. Casual players get to name their pets. They get to hang out in Goldshire with them. There's just nothing not to love about Hunter.
If you're trying to pub stomp a 15 in top overall DPS, this marksmanship specialization really, really silly.
At the same time, though, like once you get to the higher, I guess, harder difficulties, you run into a lot of trouble as a hunter.
Yeah, once you start running into real content, make sure you know how to live as a hunter, because that is the hardest thing about the hunter. It's just taking mechanics and just figuring out how to fucking live them, because sometimes hunters are just fucked.
I will also say that, like, if you're picking a mage or a warlock as well, you're kind of expected to play other specs of mage or warlock whenever they become viable. So like you may kind of get shoehorned into doing something like that
if you play a hunter in raid, they'll probably expect to play BM and MM, but survival, I think survival is probably like not required. Even in season 3 when survival was very OP.
Yeah.
Most MMs, even like in top guilds, MM were still allowed to just play marksman.
Okay. I think that that's gonna do it for us today. I feel like we got a lot of good discussion.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, so we're gonna see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Comment down what you think the easiest spec is and why you think we're dumb and wrong. We'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.
See you.